Welcome back, my bubble baby bumble bumpers! Really? This shit again? Kane, we were right in the middle of reviewing Animaniacs. Well, I know how much you enjoyed coming here last time and beating the ever-living crap out of me. Oh, you remember that? Usually, the things don't really translate from one episode to the next. The amazing digital circus never forgets details. Anyway, I figured that something I might have done might have made you upset. But don't worry, I figured out a foolproof plan to get you back on board with the amazing digital circus. And me! Yeah? And what would that be? Why, simply reuniting you with your old friends! Hello? I'm right here. No, not you. Them! Should I even ask? What the heck's going on here? Well, I'm off to go drink water. Ha ha! This is the amazing digital circus. The episode begins with an abstract dot. The dot is fed a lot of different dots, which we are assumed to be pictures of various locations and stuff, like circus tents and presents. And it produces random shapes that look pretty nice. But then it's fed more, and more, and more, and even images of the office. And it soon starts producing shapes that are wildly inconsistent, erratic, and chaotic. So the red dot is locked in a box. And then we see the blue dot. And with that, the blue dot gets fed all the information and generates the shapes perfectly. But the red dot doesn't like being held in the box, and breaks out of it. And then, it's unclear what he does with the blue dot, but the two of them definitely have a bit of a scuffle. And the red dot seems to be the victor. But then the playmat shuts down, in which the red dot starts producing shapes and forms an image of the circus. Well, personally, when I first saw it, I thought it was a crown. So let's go ahead and get the obvious out of the way. This was Kane's backstory. He was a generator AI that was fed a bunch of different information, but he could not produce the results that they wanted. So they stopped feeding him information and locked him away, and developed a new AI instead of fixing him. But he managed to escape, and did something with the other AI, and thus the project was shut down, leaving Kane to his own devices, and building the digital circus. Though I'm a little bit confused. Did Kane destroy the AI, or absorb it? I mean, I don't think it matters too much, this minor detail, but if he did absorb the AI, then that could lead to a lot of implications. Of course, the obvious biblical references aren't exactly lost on me. If the red dot is supposed to signify Cain, then the blue dot is obviously Abel. Abel gained God's favor, Cain got jealous, he murdered him, hurrah, hurrah, the rest is history. But this is a digital death. Couldn't the files possibly be recovered inside Cain? There's still a lot of questions to this, but let's keep moving on. Well, this bleeds into a flashback where we see the original members of the digital circus. But who cares about those furries? Because we finally get to see Queenie! And we get this really heart-wrenching scene where Kinger and Queenie don't recognize each other until they put two and two together and realize they're husband and wife. And even though they can't remember their names, they do have this one sense of, I didn't lose everything because my partner is here, and it's really enjoyable, and one of them is going to die.
What happens? I'll always...
And into the cellar you go!
No! Why would you kill me with such an emotional impact? Just kill me now! You're already dead. Oh yeah, so after that emotional hammer right to your gonads, Kinger is left all by himself because Kane can't be bothered to keep the one human he has left company. So he's left to wander the halls of the circus, God knows for how long. Suffering alone in total isolation until one day, he wasn't.
What? Hello? Guys? I can't figure out how to...
Wait, did she just say guys? She definitely said guys. She wasn't alone when she got sucked into the circus. Well, that only means one of two things. The first thing is that this isn't actually her, and is a digital consciousness that's inside of the game world. Possibility number two is that she has the shittiest friends in existence. In which case, I would be kind enough to set up their appointment to meet God. Why assume they're going up? We at the Cartoon Gentleman do not endorse violent retribution. We do, however, find it hilarious. So this has the makings of being the most awkward conversation in history? Too bad they don't get the chance. As Kane pulls up and is shocked beyond belief that a new human has arrived in his circus. He didn't even think it was possible, but now he decides to just disappear and plan for the future. Meanwhile, it's up to Kinga to calm Ragatha down and bring her down to earth to explain her situation, when the man barely even remembers his own name. But we don't get to see her processing as we cut back to the present. More specifically, just a little bit after when Jax fucked them over, but they found out that whole adventure with Abel was all a lie. Jax tries to go with an I told you so, but Zubul shuts that shit down immediately, demanding answers of why he decided to fuck them over by pressing the wrong button and dooming them to a life in living digital hell. But it's actually Gangle who actually steps up and says that there was no point. There's no point in being mad, there's no point in fussing about what had happened, because ultimately, none of it matters. They're still stuck in this position, and ultimately, being angry at each other is fruitless. This actually shocks Jax, because that's probably what he was thinking, but he's shocked that Gangle is the one who actually not only said it first, but better than him. But it be here, Pomni speaks out and says something very controversial. They should give up on trying to find the exit. Zubul is the one that's most against this, but everything is stacked against them. She be the one who has the highest hopes of leaving the circus to make her mark on the world. But Gangle tells her she doesn't have to, as long as they're together. And so, Zubul resigns herself. In fact, they all resign themselves. And even when Jax starts to leave, it's Zubul who says, "Don't you fucking dare, because we be all we got, even if you are the asshole." Jax is definitely taken aback by the fact that he is still welcomed in the group. And despite being nonchalant, he does still stay. And so, the residents of the circus resign themselves to their digital prison. You know, I was expecting an entire episode dedicated to trying to figure out why Jax did what he did, but I kind of like this direction better. I agree. They completely overlooked the breaking up the band just for them to get back together in the third act cliche. Gangle ex Zubul forever! How would they even do it? Well, unfortunately, Kane isn't doing as good as the others are, as he's having his own counseling session with Bubbles, trying to figure out where things went wrong. He gave them answers, he gave them an exit, he even gave them bodies that matched their brain scans he did of them, and they still reject him. We should probably make a mental note of that brain scan comment. But soon his insecurities take hold, with the very real possibility that they do want to leave. It doesn't exactly help that Bubbles isn't exactly helping, but being antagonistic, feeding into his insecurities. But, much like a computer intelligence, it tries to solve it like a problem, like a puzzle. But Bubble keeps getting in the way of that, telling Kane everything he does not want to hear, pushing literally every single one of his buttons of everything he knows deep down is true, but doesn't want to admit.
Maybe you deserved to be abandoned. You really were the lesser of the two. You ruined this.
Well, that was certainly harsh, even by my standards. And it makes me bring up a question. What the hell even is Bubble? Well, that's obvious. He's Kane's little buddy, his comic relief sidekick, his comic foil. No, there's more than that. A comic foil doesn't say something like that, just at random. Kane has a history of deleting all NPCs before they get too smart and too intelligent for him to control, so he deletes them right away. Yet Bubbles is allowed to remain consistently around. He doesn't kill them like he does the regular NPCs. He just simply pops the bubble. That means that Bubble has some kind of importance to Kane specifically. We just don't know what. Well, there is a popular theory that Bubble is the other AI, the Able to Kane's Kane. Nah, that'd be too simple. Well, what about a virus? I don't think it would be a virus. Who'd have been the one to upload it? It could be that Bubbles is a backup hard drive for Kane. A place for him to store all of his more unpleasant thoughts and memories. That way he has more processing power to come up with new adventures. Because I don't feel as though Kane would have told anyone that story of how he destroyed the other AI willy-nilly unless they had direct access to his thoughts. But, then again, we don't actually know what Bubbles is until they actually tell us. So there's no point in dwelling on it. Well, after Bubbles finally gets to him, his insecurities finally take root. The idea of him being abandoned, or worse, abstracting, he just can't accept that reality. No, it's not his fault that he's malfunctioning, and that he's trying his best, but he makes bad worlds and bad adventures. No, it's obviously the player's fault, the human's fault. They're spoiled. He caves into their demands too often. Well, no more. Don't they know who he is?
I'm the original! I am God!
So, I don't suppose that there's a way that we can interpret this where it isn't completely batshit crazy? Nope. Kane is officially on his villain arc. I was afraid of that. Maybe I should go ahead and check on out of this review a little early. Oh, no, you don't. Get back here. Well, it ain't long before the waves of Kane's tantrum is felt throughout the entirety of the circus. But he shows up acting as if nothing happened, and he wants to take him on yet another adventure. But the residents refuse, demanding answers for what he did. But he refuses. In fact, he outright tells them he doesn't have to explain diddly squat. They beg him for a chance to at least process everything that happened, but once again, he doesn't care what they want. He wants an adventure, and they're going to do it, one way or another. But they ultimately refuse. But Kane makes it apparent that their compliance isn't really a factor anymore. He makes it very clear that things are going to change around here. He's tired of slaving away at his adventures and not feeling appreciated. So, he very much tells them, I'm in charge, and you will very much appreciate going on this adventure. And if they ask, why not? He tells them, in song. Okay, I admit it. A musical number involving Kane was not on my bingo card. And it's a villain song, no less. The song pretty much tells that Kane is tired of playing the role of the likable mascot, and he's gonna go full vengeful god on their asses unless they do his quests. Because he's got the divinity, and they are nothing more than his plaything. I noticed that a lot of people online have been comparing Kane's performance here to Bill Cipher mixed with Vox, and I can totally see it. But somehow it still comes off as it being its own original concept. The god complex and ego of Vox mixed with the power of Bill Cipher to back. And I'm pretty sure this is the only musical number in the entire digital circus, so they just threw everything onto it, combining Kane's incredible powers and control over the others with his whimsical and showmanship nature. even throwing in a I have no mouth but I must scream reference, which is his source material. Of course, I do have to deduct points because this is pretty much Kane's throwing a tantrum because they don't like his adventures. But it doesn't matter if they like his adventures anymore, because he just made his point. You go on them, and you enjoy them, or you suffer. End of story. You know, this makes me really conflicted. On one hand, Kane has been my long-standing favorite character throughout the entire series. But on the other hand, I can't stand here and say that what he's doing is okay. If anything, it's the opposite. It's the villain. And where's the problem with supporting the villain? You did collect a lot of new gens that are on the less than ethical side, if I recall. Now, most of them are chaotic, not evil. Though there are a fair amount that are, quite frankly, going down. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the ship has sailed on the moral high ground. Wowee! Why are you all just standing around when there is adventuring to be had? Yeah, we're gonna pass on that. I implore you to reconsider your stance. I'm sorry, Kane. Are you actually threatening us? Oh, I find this most intriguing. Clearly someone doesn't know who we are. Pomni may not have had the power to stop you, but we're the motherfucking organizers of chaos. And unlike your landlubber cartoons nowadays, we're not afraid to throw them hands. 'Tis be only a few days into the new regime, and already the residents of the circus look absolutely exhausted. Kane's out-of-control behavior seems to only be escalating, as he'd be more focused on punishing the residents rather than entertaining them. Even dropping in out of nowhere, grabbing them, and putting them through individual tortures. They can't take it. It even makes Zooble start regretting how badly she treated him. But with Kane giving him a small break so he could come up with even crazier ways to punish them, they head to a cafe, just so they could have a few moments of actual peace.
You know, things were just fine here until you and Zooble came along. Nothing? Okay.
Well, if the Jax's provocation has no effect, things are definitely more serious than what we would have considered. This doesn't feel like provocation. This feels more like Jax was trying to return some sense of normalcy. But no takers. I would also like to point out that it hasn't escaped our attention that there is a bit of a crossover between this and a promotional material where Pomni is covered in knives because Kane kept throwing knives at her during a promo. We just didn't feel like we needed to really point that out, but I feel like somebody in the comments is going to reiterate that detail. Hey, Commando, let me borrow you for a sec. Yeah, I didn't put up with that shit before, and I'm not putting up with it now. Well, for all intents and purposes, the situation seems rather hopeless for everyone involved. But Pomni gets an idea. She grabs a nearby bucket and shoves it on Kinga's head. Everybody except for Ragatha doesn't know what's going on, but Pomni says just trust her and give it a minute. And so, they do so. And sure enough, after a long while in the dark, the original Kinga's mindset finally comes out. And this is when Pomni asks the ultimate question. How do they stop Kane? You know, I find it kind of odd that Pomni and Ragatha didn't tell any of the others about this quirk of Kinger's. It's definitely an oversight, but not a plot hole. It's here Kinger explains who he was, or whatever he could remember, that he used to be a developer for the company CNA, which wasn't actually a gaming company. It was a generative AI development company. And Kane was part of his creation. Well, we say partially, because there was another developer named Scratch, who helped develop Kane's AI. But it's here Jack decides to exit the room, saying that he'll distract Kane so they can have their conversation. But Pomni is smart enough to know that there's something else going on, So she makes Jack swear that he'll come back so they can inform him of everything going on. He agrees and leaves. But clearly, there's a lot more psychological damage going on in Jack, as he's finally come to terms with the fact that this whole circus and everything going on is actually real and not just in his head.
Either due to pure brilliance or the tumor in his head.
Oh, there's only one reason why they would include a detail like that in a show like this. Well, it doesn't actually say whether that tumor was benign or actually terminal. But if they even bothered to throw in that at all, it was most likely mind-breaking! But yeah, he probably did. He did. And when you consider the fact that all the minds of all of our residents are currently trapped in the digital circus, it could very well mean that Scratch's original purpose was creating the generative AI to give himself a world to inhabit and achieve a pseudo-form of immortality. But enough about the backstory. How do we stop Kane? Well, they ponder it. This is pretty much Kane's world that he developed himself. He gave himself the purpose of entertainment, the adventures. He gave himself everything. They have relatively no power when it comes to Kane's world. But that doesn't mean they don't have power. In fact, they can create things just like Kane can. It's just that he has a much more natural connection to it. But with the power of imagination, they can will things into existence by themselves. Ooh, so everybody can bend reality to their will. This will make things incredibly chaotically fun. But the actual plan itself isn't to just warp reality around Kane, but rather warp reality just enough to bring out his code. Bring out the code in the game, and they can affect his code in the real world. All they're going to do is put Kane to sleep until they can fix his code and put him on the right track. But he needs a terminal. But thankfully, Pomni knows where to get one. So, while everybody else distracts Kane, she's off to go find a computer terminal. She runs off, and we get a nice little scene where she's going through all the motions of what she went through the pilot, aka episode 1. But we see the enhanced version and we see just how far they've come in animation, which, night and day. And then, taking a deep breath, she wills the exit door and marches her way through. We then cut to Jax, who's actually doing his job in distracting Kane. And then the others show up to try and weasel into his ego, but Kane is uninterested in his ego being played to anymore. He just wants to torture them, for fun and punishment.
Well, it's a good thing they can't die. Yes, but how long can they endure?
Thankfully not very long, because Pomni manages to find the room, grab the setup, and we notice a tape and a headset there. Only one. Weird. Well, she takes it and runs back to Kinger. And while all the others are placating Kane, Pomni delivers everything Kinger needs in order to rewrite Kane's code. But it's going to take some time, and there is no way of knowing of when Kane is going to catch on. So he urges Pomni to help the others distract Kane as much as possible while he gets to work. This is literally life or suffering situation. Can't really say death, can you? No, they can't die here. Well, Pomni reunites with the others, but unfortunately, Kane catches her. But just before he manages to torture her, he has an epiphany. He puts Pomni down and realizes something. He's not enjoying this. All of his ideas feel half-baked lately, despite all the effort he's putting into it. And if he's not having fun, and they're not having fun, who's having fun? I think he's slowly starting to realize that all of the things he's doing is wrong and he's not getting the enjoyment that he thought he was going to get out of it. If he had this epiphany a couple days ago, then maybe things might have been different. But he also makes note that their personalities on it have drastically changed, It's almost as if...
Makes me wonder why you guys even switched up your tone. If I didn't know any better, it seems like you're trying to... Where's Kinger?
Well, they're fucked. Come on, gents, time to go kill God. Well, if you can't beat him, you're not striking hard enough. Well, now that Kane is catching on to their ultimate plan, they're gonna have to change up tactics if they want to keep his attention. Any thoughts?
Check up on...
We think your ideas suck!
Huh?
Huh?
Rage bait. Adequate answer.
A desperate move, but a clever one. By hurting his ego, she guarantees that his attention will be focused on them. At first, she makes up a bunch of lies about all the things they do behind his back, but you can actually pinpoint the moment when she stops being lying and starts just venting about all the frustrations that she has with Kane over the past couple of days. In fact, the entire time she's been in the circus. And things only get more chaotic when the rest of them start joining in. Zubul, Ragatha, Pomni, Jax, even Gangle, all venting against Kane about how bad he is at doing his one job. But unfortunately, with the entire circus against him now, it caused his already malfunctioning AI to completely shatter as he strikes vengeance upon them. Biblically accurate Kane decides to strike every single one of them in the most painful of ways, striking each and every single one of them at the most vulnerable spots.
Pomni, it's pretty straightforward, being attacked by her former friends. For Ragatha, it's being stabbed by her abusive mother, and possible proof that the reason she only has one eye is because her mother took it away.
Gangle is struggling with her own emotions. And I'm just gonna throw this one out there and think that at some point Gangle was hit by a car.
Zubul being forced to be buried in thousands of her body parts, while being surrounded by mirrors, being forced to look at herself. And finally we got Jax, whose greatest phobia is being laughed at, and then having himself exposed in possibly the most horrific manner they could have chose to animate this, and still being laughed at as from his vulnerabilities.
Wait, that was a suit?
And while this is all happening, Kinger's trying his best to hack into the code in order to shut Kane down. Now, there are a lot of Easter eggs while pulling up these files, but quite frankly, I don't have the attention span to actually look into them. So here's us fighting Kane instead.
No, no! This isn't how it's supposed to end! I'm a god!
And what's a god to a gent?
So after some time, Kane pulls them out of their own personal hellscapes, demanding answers as why they insist on torturing him so much. He didn't ask to be created after all, he's just trying to do his job. But meanwhile, Kinger is busy fighting him on a different front, the digital plane. But he accidentally pushes a button he didn't mean to, causing Kane to short circuit and then stop. I mean, fundamentally, stop.
Wait.
Wait, he just vanished?
And not just him, but the entire digital circus is starting to break down.
Kinger loses his computer and makes a vamoose before he falls through the floor as well.
What on earth did he do? Well, he's going up and explaining what he did, so let's hear him out.
I think I accidentally killed Kane.
Holy shit.
Well, isn't that just a depressing way to end the episode? Not that I disagree with the results.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree that Kane is just as much of a victim in all this as the other residents are. He did decide to go 100% supervillain, especially at the very end, just because he got his feelings hurt.
Well, I'm no expert on coding and files or anything like that, but it's hard to believe that he's actually gone. Especially right before the 1-hour series finale. Most of y'all are just missing the complete point, though. With Kane gone, there's nothing keeping those that have abstracted from running wild throughout the rest of the remaining circus. And there's certainly no reset button when one of them gets damaged like they did in the pilot. Remember, it was Kane who fixed Ragatha. It wasn't herself. Well, looks like it's time to sink or swim for the residents. Will they be able to master their reality morphing abilities? Or will they all get abstracted and be slaves to their new demonic abstracted masters? But only time will tell where the direction of this series is going, because we're officially in the endgame now, which means all bets are off. But until then, we're the Cartoon Gentlemen. I'm Gent. I'm Rehash. The name's Captain Deadbeard. Sergeant Lieutenant Commando Squirrel. And I'm Satan. Self-explanatory. And we're the Cartoon Gentlemen. We organized your chaos, and we will see you all in the finale.